Hello, Lightworker family. If you're new to my channel, I'm Kaylee Baum. I'm a professional psychic in service of Lightworkers all over the world. I've been in practice since 2015. Serving Lightworkers is a real passion of mine, especially the topic in how Lightworkers can thrive here on Earth, not just in fulfilling their Dharma as servants to humanity, but also in living deeply purposeful personal lives. So if this content interests you, I would love for you to subscribe so I may be of service to you as well. In today's video, I'm sharing a little bit of a follow-up story to a video I posted last week regarding how I met my destined partner. So if you haven't watched that video and are interested in how spirit, my intuition, my own soul led me to meeting my destined partner, I will link that in the description box below for you. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you some stories regarding how my husband and I, Kevin, how we came together after meeting to lead a very spirit-led, intuitive-based relationship and life together. So I leave off, I believe, with how we met and we were together, and we essentially, believe it or not, married 5 months to the day after we met. I know that's not the norm for everyone or everyone's story, but that's our story. We've been happily married for 11 years now since then, so it all worked out. Anyway, so when we met, I was working as a colon hydrotherapist in a successful naturopathic medical clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona. My husband led a very successful career in both real estate and real estate property management. And so together we lived in a high-rise apartment in downtown Phoenix. And so we both had established jobs and careers. And we, you may recall, I have a soulmate son. And so my husband had a 12-year-old son at the time. He's now almost 24. And so we just merged our lives together, and we were doing the day-to-day. Well, as fate would have it, when you take two, twin flames and you put them together and you have destined partners, oftentimes the parts of your life, both as individuals and collective, that aren't serving your higher purpose or your highest and best interest on a soul level, oftentimes those parts of your life will really start to deconstruct and disassemble. And so within our first year of marriage, which is really only, we married after only 5 months of knowing each other. And so our first year of marriage was this very intense year of, it wasn't trying or challenging in any way. There wasn't like anything that would shake the foundation of our connection. It was just a lot of the world around us like shape-shifting and transforming in really significant ways. One obviously being a paranormal significant way. I was not practicing as a professional psychic, and then within a very short time of being married to Kevin, due to our twin flame connection and due to our combined spiritual gifts, my third eye opened, I started channeling, and my psychic abilities really rapidly increased. And at the same time, Kevin was experiencing a similar transformation. And his part was that before we met, he had always had this craving for more life. My husband has an incredible zest for life and a lot of ambition to live to the fullest. And he's very calculated. He's not like a adrenaline junkie or adventure seeker in that sense, but he and I really connected on having a shared value of really understanding that one day we're going to die. Like, I remember being a child and looking out the window at school and thinking, why are we sitting here? What are we doing? Like, does everybody know that we're going to die one day? And like, we should be out like enjoying life. And I just remember having like existential crises at a very young age and always feeling like almost as if my level of consciousness was living like backwards. Like I felt like I had the desire to live life to the fullest like a 90-year-old would, but I was like in an 8-year-old's body. And it was always, I always felt very just almost like an outlier or different in that sense. And I never understood why everyone else was just content. And when I met my husband, we clicked in that way so much. So even though we both were operating within the construct of normal, typical society, you know, I mean, we were both still pretty alternative in our thoughts and feelings and how we were trying to live our lives. Like we were both into holistic healthcare and naturopathic medicine. So there was an alternative element to us, yes, but we were both still like working 9 to 5s and just showing up, you know, in the way that we assumed was successful. But because we connected on that wavelength, I think what happens is when you find a partner and you connect on that wavelength, it's like your souls come together and then things really start to like deconstruct and transform, like I said. And so my part that I've shared in other videos, my part is that I went from really, really thoroughly loving and enjoying working in holistic healthcare and the transformation that I was going through and that I was aiding in my patients. But within a very short time, again, my psychic abilities increased in the midst of this marriage, in the midst of this connection. And for Kevin's part, he had this experience, and I don't love to speak for other people, but I think he would, agree with, he had this experience of, I want more, I want to do more. And he's very responsible. He was a young teenage parent. And so he was only 31 when we met, but he was very long into a very steady, consistent career. And he was always hustling and providing for his child and for himself. And so again, one of the things when we met that he mentioned about really being interested in doing, he was an avid runner, and he said, you know, I've completed one marathon, a road marathon, but I'm really interested in Ironman racing. And so one of the things that we bonded on was this shared interest in supporting each other in like making dreams come true. And I had really felt, because I wasn't a young teen parent, and I had been afforded a lot of opportunities as the youngest child in my family to get a lot of one-on-one time with my parents, and my parents supported my dreams and my ambitions in life. And so I really wanted to pay it forward and support him in being able to have that opportunity, because he went from essentially graduating high school to being a dad and having that responsibility. So we wrote out like a plan. We hired a coach, and he started training essentially full time while working his full-time job in the city. He started training full time for his first Ironman race. And so within the first, within a year of marriage, within the first year of our marriage, he did a half distance Ironman race and a full distance Ironman race. And he absolutely crushed it. And his spirit just came to life. Like his soul just came to life. Like just thinking about that transformation just makes me emotional, because he had given so much and done such an incredible job as a father, and to build, self-reliance and independence. And so it was really beautiful to then hold space and champion him to go after a dream of his. And so I think at that point we were after that first year, even though we were still living in the city and working our city jobs, I think we felt that ooh, we could chase our dreams together. And we are the team, we're the team for each other and together. And it was just so exhilarating and exciting. And then that was then at that point, after he did his full distance Ironman race, was when I had my psychic awakening, and then I started channeling. And so it was like at the same time, we both like found our thing. We had both already been, spiritual and super earthy, and like wanted to spend a lot of time out in nature. And he was training a lot in nature. But it was like we were both just like ascending and coming to life in like really deep, meaningful, purposeful ways. And we were being witness to each other in those ways. And it was just that like twin flame, like experience together. And it was happening very rapidly within just that first year of marriage. And so, because we lived in the city, my husband's uncle owned a little old cabin in northern Arizona, a few hours away. And so we were spending a lot of our weekends going up there and spending time in nature. And he would do his long distance running and his long distance cycling up there. And so we really just fell in love with our time up at this little old like cabin. And so every time we would leave to come back to the city and work, we would just kind of be like, I would literally like cry. Like I would just cry and I'd be like, I don't want to go back. Side note, if you know, I'm from the Northwest. So I'm from Eastern Washington, close to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, beautiful part of the country, as well as Anchorage, Alaska. Alaska's breathtaking. So I was this Northwest girly, fell in love with an Arizona man. And so my husband, being a born and raised Phoenician, had a deep love for like the forest and the woods. And he was always wanting to kind of escape the concrete jungle of Phoenix. And so we both loved our time in the Ponderosa Pines in northern Arizona, at the elevation and just the difference from the pace of the city. And so it was about a year and a half, almost 2 years, like a few months short of 2 years into our relationship, where we were in it was coming upon 2 years of living, in downtown Phoenix and working our city jobs together. And I was at this point where I was taking the leap from my job, my city job, into doing full-time readings. And it happened very rapidly. And it was like a very strong, rapid, trickle effect where I was being referred person after person after person. And so I was at this point where I was able to suddenly work remotely, because the way I work with my clients over the phone, my practice from the get-go started that way. I never did in-person readings. It's not that I can't, it's just that it happened to be that all of the people that were being referred to me lived all over the world. They lived all over the country at that time. And so it was just kind of a matter of how my practice began, was how I continued to practice, was remotely over the phone. So here we were kind of at this interesting point where we were no longer feeling fulfilled in living in the high rise. If you've seen my From Sick to Psychic video, I became ill. I activated an autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, by living in a high electricity environment. And I was able to cure it, and have had it in remission for the last over 10 years now, by eliminating myself from that environment, as well as many other things, both spiritually and physically. But there were just a lot of things lining up. Like my health was being affected. Kevin was no longer happy in his career. He really just wanted to train full time, and he was thriving in that routine. And then all of a sudden I had a remote working job. And so Kevin, being a very practical, success oriented, ambitious, responsible man, was still just kind of like, pushing himself forward in his career. And I was kind of at this point as an intuitive woman, wanting to prioritize his health and well-being and his dreams and desires more so than just like the practical sense. And, I've now aged and matured, and maybe I wouldn't be so risk oriented now. But at the ripe age of 25 at that time, I definitely started to kind of ask him, like, do you want to like abandon ship, like take a breather, take space, and quit your job, and just like recalibrate and find something later, like just take a break. And at the time, it felt really right to me because, again, we had all of these things lining up. I had my psychic awakening, and I was able to work remotely. We no longer could live in the place that we were living because of my health. And his job was coming to an end, and there was going to be new ownership coming in. And so I was like, this is the perfect time to jump ship. And so in his mind, he was like, yeah, I'm going to jump ship from this job, but I'll just get another one. And he had a job he was pretty sought out. He was sought after in his career. And so he lined up another job, like somebody else picked him up, and he even like signed on with them. And I had this growing like anxiety and panic, and it felt like my soul was coming in, and his soul, like every time I was around him, I would hear his soul be like, you have to talk to him. You have to talk. And it was just like so overwhelming. And I remember asking him, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to do this? And he's like, yes, I'm doing this. I'm taking this job. It's the right thing to do. I'm not going to not have a job. And I remember one day saying, can we meet like somewhere else other than our own apartment? Because I felt like we were having the same conversation in our apartment, and I felt like I need to meet with him and have it be like a business meeting in a sense, like outside of our home. And it reminds me, I was thinking about it today in thinking about what I wanted to share, and it reminds me of the scene, if you've seen The Notebook, when Ryan Gosling, the romantic partners in the movie, Ryan Gosling says to Rachel McAdams, his love interest, what do you want? And she's like, I don't know. It's not that simple. And then he yells again, what do you want? And it was literally that scene. I met with him outside of our home, and I was just like, what do you want? Like, what does your soul want? And he literally was like, it's not that simple. Like, of course I want something else, but I have to do this. And I just remember being like, you don't have to do this. I've got your back. Like, let's jump. Like, you jump, I jump. And so this is giving me like anxiety almost thinking about it, because it was such an exciting, exhilarating thing, but it's so funny how like as you age, you have like more trepidation with these types of things. So within like a matter of weeks, we were like, okay, he left that job. It was already coming to an end, and he ultimately decided to not take the other job. And we moved. We bought the little rink-a-dink cabin from his uncle, and which we loved. Like to us, it was like camping, and we're big avid tent campers. We love to camp, but it was a little fixer-upper. It was an old fixer-upper, and it was like one bedroom. So we moved, like I was working remote. He closed out his job in a matter of weeks. We bought this little cabin. We moved there, and we gave up our city jobs. We gave up most of everything we owned, and we moved into this tiny little cabin, and we lived on rice, beans, broccoli, and a lot of meditation and a lot of trail running, because this little cabin butted up against the national forest, the Ponderosa pine forest in northern Arizona, like 45, 50 minutes from Flagstaff. So we were in this remote little village, literally a village. It was mostly like a summer cabin town. So we lived there year round for 4.5 years. And our 4.5 years there, it was it was like living like monks, like on a mountaintop. It was even higher elevation than Flagstaff. It was like 7,400 feet. And I essentially cultivated my practice there as a psychic. It's making me emotional again, but we had no internet. We barely had little electricity for some little lights, and we had like a old 1950s oven. And yeah, it was like our everything. We gave up everything to just be with ourselves and to be with each other and to be with nature. And we were deeply immersed in nature. Kevin would get up with the sunrise, his natural circadian rhythm, like he's so in tune with the elements and with the rhythms of the day and the seasons. And so he would wake up and meditate, and then he would run like 10, 15 miles in the woods, like on the Arizona Trail. Fun fact, we got married on the Arizona Trail before he fell in love with trail running, and 2 years before we even moved up to this little cabin. When we got married, we wanted to just walk out into the woods and get married with our really close friends and family. And so we just scouted different spots around Flagstaff, and Kevin just very intuitively like walked us out into the woods, and we stood over this single track trail and we said our vows in front of our friends and family. And it's really funny because I tease him all the time now that he's an ultra trail runner now. So he does long distance ultra trail running, 30, 50, 100-mile races. He's very passionate and very gifted, and it's beautiful to watch. But I tease him that he married the trail that day and me, because it's totally it might be the first love of his life, but we'll just say it's the second love of his life behind me. So we lived right off the Arizona Trail. Like he could run to the trail and just run. And so he would come home and I would meditate and I would channel for my clients. And so thankfully, I was able to have an income with my channeling, but we really just lived extremely simply, and we lived as minimalist, and we thrived in just living a very simple life, and we boiled ourselves down, and it was a time of refiner's fire and a lot of breakthroughs and breakdowns and transformation. And 2 years in, we felt like, I think 2 years in, we just felt like our vibration was just like really high and things were really good. And at that time, I started to really feel and sense the spirit of our daughter that we had. I'll make another video talking about her connection with us and in communicating with us long before she incarnated. But about 2 years into our time at the cabin, as we call it, was when we had our daughter. And then we raised her for the first 2 years. We wanted to focus really intentionally on her first 2 years in traditional shamanism as well as secure attachment theory. Both schools of thought relate the first 2 years of life to the development of secure attachment, as well as the development of your psyche and the manifestation of your full self, and the full expression of your full self is the first 2 years. So we wanted to raise her. So she was, I gave birth to her in Flagstaff, and we raised her in the little cabin for the first 2 years. And it was just a quiet, simple, minimalistic life where we lived very hand to mouth. We lived very hand to mouth, both financially and spiritually. And it was a very fruitful, abundant spiritual experience. And it was a lot of cathartic releasing, a lot of purging, as well as integrating. And it really, my husband called it like our rewilding years, because I think he and I were both born into our lives as empathic, sensitive, neurodivergent humans who just never really felt good, let alone great, in certain constructs of society. And it's not necessarily a demonization of society. We love community. We love people. We love humanity. It was more so just like the norm or the box of how to live just didn't work for us. And so Kevin and I always say that we had to climb down a ladder that we were like, we'd reached like the ceiling, and like we were just on the top of a ladder, and it was like, yeah, we both together made really good money, and we were extremely privileged, and we lived these like very cush lives and made plenty of money, but we were also internally, we were living lives of quiet desperation. And when we met, that quiet desperation, we whispered to each other, and then it was like, oh, you too. And so then it was like there was no denying it, and now we had a partner to co-create a completely different life with. And so we moved to this little cabin, and we gave up everything, and we had just a little bit of savings, no debt, but a little bit of savings. And I just fell in love with channeling for people and with being with people and doing readings. And so the little bit of money that I would get from doing that, for 5 people a week would just kind of keep us going. And it just, so we always say that we climbed down one ladder, and it's very humbling when you've reached a level of earthly success to climb down that ladder and then walk over to build your own ladder, but knowing that the ladder you build with your own hands, away from society and away from social constructs, is it's going to be hard, but then there's no limit. Like there's no limit, and you get to go at your own pace, and you get to be left to your own devices, and you get to handcraft it. And therefore you love it, and you tend to it, and you nurture it, and you're proud of it. And so, there were so many times where we would look at each other, and I'd be like, really? We have a compost toilet. And it's like, it was like our life there was like very much like chop wood, carry water. And look, I get that there's like also so much privilege to what we did have, even just like running water and, when our pipes wouldn't freeze, of course. But, we had a roof over our heads. We had the rice and beans to eat, and also the soulful privilege. I do understand that oftentimes people would love to, sidestep into a time where they could just spend all their time praying and meditating and trail running. And so there was so much sacrifice, and there was so much hardship, and there were aspects of it that were very challenging, and we would sometimes question it. Sometimes we would like look at going back, but then we would just kind of look at each other, and we'd be like, are you still in this? And I'd be like, yeah, like we still choose this. And it's not for everybody, and I get that, but it's just, you have to pick my mom always says, you have to pick your hard. You have to, and so some hard things are easier for other people. And I truly believe that is like, perhaps you're listening and you would never want to live in that situation. that hand to mouth, like living on a prayer and following your soul in that sense. But you have your own path, and you have your own versions of hard that and way of transforming and connecting to your soul. But for us, it was very much being out in silence, being out in nature. We would even in our little cabin, we'd be like, do you want to go sleep in a tent tonight? And there were weeks, if not months on end, where we would hike up into the woods, away from our cabin. We would pitch a tent and we would keep our bedding in there. And so then we would like spend the day in our cabin, work, and then at night we would like drive in our little Subaru to the tent and sleep. And it was just like the best sleep ever. And we just, yeah. So yeah, not everybody wants to live in a van down by the river, but we are definitely van down by the river people. And yeah, so that's our story of going from two city slickers, living in a fancy high-rise apartment with city jobs, to looking at each other and thinking, we want to start living our way, even if it comes with challenge and sacrifice. And I just want to share with you, if you feel like your heart and soul is leading you to take a leap of faith and to go against the grain or to live alternatively, I cannot recommend it enough. And I do believe that you can follow your dreams and you can follow your soul's desires, and you can live your truth, your authenticity, your ambitions, while not having to take risks that would put you into a fight flight state. And I think Kevin and I, we definitely operate at like a, jump in to test the water. In channeling for people, I've really learned that everyone is wired differently, and that's a beautiful thing. And so I often guide my clients. I'm like, okay, if you want to go from A to Z, like you can go this way, like you can, rather than just jumping in, you can find that trail around and then enter the waters, a bit more eloquently or with greater ease. But some people are just meant to jump in. And I think in my work, especially in my life, especially, I've always been like a full, just like, don't overthink it. Just jump off the cliff, full send. Don't even look down at the water, and then feel the water once you get to it. And then it's kind of like in my life as a professional, because I've done so many of those leaps, it's almost like I test the waters to where when I read for people, I can assess how they could best navigate and be best supported in following their soul's intuition or following a certain path, because I've done the full immersion. And so I find that I can interpret what's the best for everyone. And there's no better way. There's no like, oh, you're trusting spirit more because, you just leapt in. This whole like leap in the net will appear thing isn't everybody's path and isn't always the reality. I find that everyone follows their intuition and follows spirit differently. And it's about knowing how you personally connect to spirit and intuition, as well as what works to best support you in your thriving. Because one path may be extremely dysregulating to one person, and another path would be extremely dysregulating. So for me, going slow is extremely anxiety producing and extremely dysregulating. But for other people, that can be super supportive. And so there's no hierarchy of how one listens to spirit and how one follows their intuition. I just happen to, I have no way around just being pushed in. So, yeah, so that's my little part 2 follow-up. And while we lived for four years at the cabin and birthed our baby girl and cultivated as best we could a secure attachment with her and a low stimuli, simplistic, minimalistic life. Kevin completed 5 Ironman races, countless marathons, he fell in love with ultra trail running and did numerous ultra trail runs. And I cultivated, like I said, the first 4.5, nearly 5 years of my practice as an intuitive, and we both just came together and prayed and meditated and connected to our higher selves in a really deep way. And we were able to concentrate ourselves as individuals down to our purest essence. And then we were able to, allow for that time frame to begin rebuilding from that place. And so I think I'll leave it there for what comes next after leaving the cabin. And I hope you enjoyed this story and that you feel inspired to, navigate your own. If you're currently in a chapter of deconstruction or, disassembling certain aspects of your life, or it's happening to you, I always tell my clients, when you're going through a cathartic release or an existential crisis, or you're going through an ascension process, right? Like, envision a shuttle that is being catapulted up into space. When you create the people that create the shuttle, they create all the parts of the shuttle. And then when the shuttle takes off into space, parts of the shuttle literally break off and break away so that the shuttle can go up into the stratosphere, right? And so I think oftentimes when we go through ascension processes when we ascend, oftentimes we're really shaken up by the amount of, disassembling that takes place in our life. And it's these parts of the shuttle that once were part of your identity or parts of you. And it can be very discombobulating and very scary and fear-inducing, because you're like, whoa, that was part of me. But that was always the point. It's like, it was the point to shed those parts of you so that you can reach higher and you can ascend higher. And so I just want to share with you that the part of me that is still living over and over and over, because time doesn't exist, we're living the same moment over and over at all times. And the part of me that is still living in that time at the cabin, I'm with you. I get it. I feel it. I know it. And yeah, you're not alone. And if you feel lost or hopeless in that place, just know that the parts that are leaving are meant to leave, and just relax in that surrender. And you're being cultivated and concentrated down into your purest essence and your purest form. And there will come a point where all of that shedding will be so far behind you, and you'll feel just that smooth sailing into the stratosphere. And we, of course, have chapters and cycles where we repeat these things. It's in layers. Healing isn't linear. Life isn't linear. But if you're currently in that deconstruction phase, I send you my love and I send you my light, and keep going. It's great. The fruits of your labor are around the corner. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this story, and part 3 and more to come. Many blessings to you. I'll see you in the next video.